Imagine your mother looking at your newborn face, and instead of calling you beloved or gift from God, she names you Pain, not born in pain. Your actual name, the word everyone would speak over you for the rest of your life, literally means he causes suffering. That was reality for a man buried in the most boring chapter of the Bible. And yet, when he finally broke and prayed one desperate prayer, God said yes so fast it made history. Subscribe so your pain turns to blessings, just like Jabez. His name was Jabez, 2 verses, 55 Hebrew words, hidden in 1 Chronicles chapter 4, a genealogy so monotonous that most people skip it entirely. But 3,000 years later, rabbis still argue about his prayer. Millions have prayed it. And what makes it absolutely fascinating is this. Jabez had already won. He was already more honorable than his brothers. He had already overcome his curse. So why did he fall on his face and cry out to God like a man with nothing left to lose? And why did heaven respond instantly? Because Jabez discovered something most believers never learn. There's a way to pray that God cannot resist. A 4-part structure so brilliantly designed, so spiritually mature, so kingdom-focused, that the biblical author stopped recording boring genealogies just to preserve it forever. Subscribe to Deep Bible History. I'm here to take you beyond the surface of Scripture, beyond the Sunday school stories you've heard 100 times, and into the forgotten corners of God's Word, where the most profound truths often hide in plain sight. Today, we're not just learning about Jabez. We're discovering the anatomy of a prayer that moves heaven. But before we dive into his famous prayer, before we unpack the 4 requests that changed everything, we need to understand something darker. We need to talk about his name. Because in ancient Israel, names weren't just labels. They were prophecies. They were declarations of destiny. They were words spoken over you thousands upon thousands of times throughout your life, shaping your identity, defining your future, telling you who you were supposed to become. And Jabez's name was a curse. The curse spoken at birth. The biblical text tells us specifically, his mother had named him Jabez, saying, "I gave birth to him in pain." Stop and think about that for a moment. Childbirth was always painful in the ancient world. Every mother experienced it. Women died in labor regularly. Pain was universal. But most mothers didn't name their children after their labor pains. Most mothers didn't look at their newborn sons and decide to mark them forever with the worst moment of their own experience. So what was different about Jabez's birth? What happened that caused his mother to do something so unusual, so cruel, that the biblical author felt compelled to explain it 3,000 years later? The rabbinical tradition, those ancient Jewish commentaries written by scholars who studied every word of Scripture with microscopic detail, preserves oral traditions about Jabez that aren't in the biblical text. According to these traditions, Jabez's birth wasn't just physically painful, it was tragically painful. Some rabbis suggest his mother nearly died in childbirth, that she hemorrhaged so severely that the midwives thought they would lose both mother and child. Others suggest the baby was born with physical deformities, complications that made his survival uncertain, and his mother's recovery excruciating. Still others hint at something even more traumatic, that perhaps his birth coincided with a family tragedy, maybe even the death of his father, so that his first breath in this world was marked by death, loss, and unbearable grief. We can't verify these traditions as historical fact. The Bible doesn't give us those details. But what these ancient commentaries show us is that for thousands of years, Jewish scholars looked at this text and said, something extraordinary happened here. Something so devastating that it marked this child for life. something that made a mother name her son after the worst experience of her existence. One particularly haunting rabbinical commentary suggests that Jabez's mother was in such anguish during his birth that she made a vow. In her pain, possibly delirious, she declared, "This child has caused me such suffering. Let suffering be his name, and let him remember every day of his life what he cost me." Can you imagine being reminded every single day of the pain you caused? Every time your mother said your name, it was an accusation. Every time you introduced yourself, you were declaring your own unworthiness. Every time someone called for you, you were reminded, you are the one who brought suffering into this world. Perhaps some of you watching this know exactly what that feels like. Maybe you weren't named pain, but you were called other things. Mistake, accident, burden, disappointment, the reason we couldn't pursue our dreams, the child who ruined everything. Maybe someone in your life, a parent, a teacher, a spouse, a friend, spoke words over you that became your identity. Words you've carried for years, even decades. Words that have shaped every decision you've made, every relationship you've entered, every opportunity you've approached or avoided. Because when you believe deep in your core that you are pain, or failure, or broken, or not enough, you live like it. But here's where the story of Jabez becomes absolutely fascinating. Because despite his name, despite the curse spoken over him at birth, despite being marked as pain from his first breath, the biblical text tells us something remarkable in just 5 words. Jabez was more honorable than his brothers. Wait, stop, read that again. More honorable than his brothers. Not just honorable, not just decent, not just surviving despite his circumstances. He was more honorable than his siblings, who presumably had normal names, normal childhoods, normal identities. Despite being called pain, despite being reminded daily of the suffering he allegedly caused, despite carrying the weight of his mother's trauma on his shoulders, he became the most honorable one in his family. How? What did he do? The text doesn't tell us. It doesn't give us a list of his achievements or a detailed account of his character development. But it shows us something incredible. Jabez refused to live up or down to his name. He refused to let his past define his future. He refused to become what he was called. And that refusal, that rebellion against his spoken destiny, set the stage for the most powerful 4-sentence prayer in the entire Old Testament, the desperate cry. When honor wasn't enough, picture Jabez at the breaking point. He had fought his entire life against the identity spoken over him. He had worked harder, studied longer, served more faithfully than anyone else in his family. He had become honorable despite every reason not to be. He had proved that he was more than his name, more than his mother's pain, more than the curse declared at his birth. By any reasonable standard, he had succeeded. He had overcome, he had won. But it wasn't enough. Because here's what nobody tells you about overcoming adversity. Sometimes you can be honorable and still be limited. Sometimes you can be the best version of yourself and still feel constrained by circumstances beyond your control. Sometimes you can refuse to be defined by your past and still find yourself unable to break free from its consequences. Jabez had risen above his name, but he hadn't escaped it. He was honorable, yes. But was he blessed? Was he experiencing the fullness of what God intended for his life? Or was he merely surviving, merely not failing, merely proving he wasn't what they called him? And so Jabez did something radical, something desperate, something that revealed the true depth of his faith. He cried out to God. The Hebrew word used here is kara, and it's not a polite prayer. It's not a casual conversation. It's not, "Dear God, if you have a moment, I'd like to discuss something with you." This is a gut-wrenching, soul-deep, desperate shout into the heavens. This is a man who has reached the absolute end of himself and is now throwing his entire being before the throne of God, saying, "If you don't intervene, I'm finished. If you don't do something I cannot do for myself, I will never be more than honorable despite my name. I'll never be blessed because of your power." Comfortable people don't cry out. Satisfied people don't desperately plead. Content people don't shout at God with everything they have. It's only when we reach the end of ourselves, when we've exhausted every human solution, when we've tried everything within our power, when we've achieved all we can achieve through our own strength and it's still not enough, that we finally reach for God with this kind of urgency. And notice who Jabez cried out to: the God of Israel. Not just God, not a God, not the gods of the nations. He cried out to the God of Israel, the covenant-keeping God, the promise-making God, the God who had a track record of doing impossible things for hopeless people. This was the God who took a barren 90-year-old woman named Sarah and made her the mother of nations. This was the God who took a murderer on the run named Moses and made him the deliverer of millions. This was the God who took a fugitive shepherd boy named David and made him a king. This was the God who specialized in taking people with terrible pasts and giving them glorious futures. Jabez knew this. He knew the stories. He knew the history. He knew that the God of Israel had a reputation for rewriting stories, for transforming identities, for taking the rejected and making them chosen, for taking the cursed and making them blessed. And so when Jabez opened his mouth to pray, he wasn't praying to a distant deity who might or might not care about his personal situation. He was crying out to the God who had been intervening in human history since the beginning, who had a documented pattern of responding to desperate faith with supernatural power. And then Jabez prayed 4 requests, 4 simple sentences that contain layers of meaning, 4 declarations that together formed one of the most brilliantly constructed prayers in all of Scripture. Request 1. Redefine me from pain to blessing. Oh, that you would bless me. On the surface, this sounds like a typical prayer. Everyone asks for blessings, right? We bless our food. We ask God to bless our day. We hope for blessings in our lives. But in Hebrew, this phrase carries weight that gets completely lost in English translation. The word bless here is barak, and it doesn't just mean make me feel good or give me nice things. In Hebrew thought, to be blessed meant to be empowered for a purpose. It meant to have divine favor that enabled you to fulfill your calling. It meant that God was actively working in and through your life to accomplish something significant. When God blessed Abraham, He didn't just make him feel happy. He empowered him to become the father of nations, to establish a covenant that would impact all of human history. When God blessed Joseph, He didn't just give him good feelings. He gave him the supernatural ability to interpret dreams, to manage the resources of an entire empire, to save civilizations from famine. When God blessed David, He didn't just pat him on the head. He anointed him with power to lead a kingdom, to write psalms that would inspire billions, to establish a lineage that would eventually bring the Messiah into the world. So when Jabez says, "Oh, that you would bless me," he's not asking for a comfortable life. He's not praying for ease or convenience or pleasant circumstances. He's saying, "God, empower me for something bigger than my pain. Give me divine favor that enables me to do what I was created to do, despite what I was called. Transform my identity at the deepest level. Redefine me not by my past, but by your purpose. But here's what makes this request even more profound when you remember Jabez's context. His name means pain. His identity from birth has been suffering. His label has been hardship. The word spoken over him thousands upon thousands of times throughout his life has been a curse. And now he's standing before the God of Israel saying, I may have been named pain, but I'm asking you to know me as blessed. I may have been called suffering, but I'm asking you to see me as empowered. The world spoke one word over me. I'm asking you to speak a different word. Do you see what he's doing? This isn't denial. This isn't pretending his past didn't happen. This isn't toxic positivity that ignores reality. Jabez isn't saying, I'm going to pretend I wasn't named pain. He's saying, God, you have the authority to rename me. You have the power to rewrite my story. You have the ability to make me something different than what I was called. And I'm asking you, begging you, crying out to you with everything I have, to transform my identity from pain to blessed. This is the prayer of someone who understands that God is not bound by human declarations. This is the prayer of someone who believes that divine words carry more weight than human words. This is the prayer of someone who has lived under a curse and is now asking for a blessing powerful enough to break it. And some of you need to hear this today. Whatever name was spoken over you, failure because of a business that didn't work, divorced because of a marriage that ended, barren because of children you couldn't have, addict because of a struggle you can't seem to beat, disappointment because you didn't meet someone's expectations, broken because of trauma you didn't cause, unworthy because someone made you believe you're not enough. God has the authority to speak a different name, a truer name, a blessed name. But Jabez doesn't stop there, because blessing without direction is just comfort. And Jabez wasn't praying for comfort. He was praying for purpose. He was praying for capacity. He was praying for space to be effective in the calling God had placed on his life. Which brings us to the second request, and this one is going to challenge some comfortable theology. Request 2, expand my capacity. The courage to ask for more. Enlarge my territory. Now, some preachers get uncomfortable with this part of the prayer. They squirm in their pulpits. They qualify it, contextualize it, explain it away. Well, you see, Jabez wasn't really asking for material expansion. He was speaking metaphorically about spiritual territory. He was using physical language to describe internal growth. And while there may be spiritual applications, let's be honest about what the text actually says. Jabez asked God to enlarge his territory, his actual physical, literal territory, his land, his property, his sphere of influence, his capacity to provide for his family and leave a legacy. And some of us have been taught that this kind of prayer is selfish, that asking God for increase is materialistic, that wanting more is evidence of greed or worldliness or insufficient contentment. We've been told to pray small, to want less, to be satisfied with barely enough, because somehow poverty and limitation are more spiritual than abundance and expansion. But here's what you need to understand about ancient Israelite culture. Territory meant everything. Your land determined your ability to provide for your family. Your land determined your social standing in the community. Your land determined your legacy, what you could pass on to your children and grandchildren. If you had no land, you had no future. You were dependent on others, vulnerable to exploitation, and unable to fulfill the most basic responsibilities of a man in that culture. Land wasn't about luxury. It was about dignity, provision, and the capacity to serve. So when Jabez asks God to enlarge his territory, he's not asking to build a vacation home or buy a luxury chariot or accumulate wealth for its own sake. He's saying, God, increase my capacity. Expand my ability to provide. Give me more space to be effective. Enlarge the platform where I can make a difference. Extend my influence so that I can impact more lives for your purposes. In modern terms, he's praying, God, expand my business so I can employ more people and support more families. Grow my ministry so I can reach more souls and disciple more believers. Increase my influence so I can impact more lives and create more positive change. Give me greater capacity, financial, relational, positional, to do the work you've called me to do. And here's the difference between greed and vision, between selfishness and stewardship, between asking for more because you want to consume it on yourself, and asking for more because you want to serve God's purposes more effectively. Greed says, I want more for me. Vision says, I want more for what you've called me to do. Greed is about consumption. Vision is about capacity. Greed asks, how can I get more to spend on myself? Vision asks, how can I steward more for your kingdom? And you know how you can tell the difference in Jabez's prayer. Look at what he asks for immediately after requesting an enlarged territory. Because he doesn't just ask for more and then end his prayer. He doesn't say, bless me, enlarge my territory, amen, I'm out, thanks God. No. He immediately follows his request for expansion with 2 additional requests that reveal his true motive, his actual heart, his real concern. Jabez understood something that many of us forget. Expanded capacity without God's presence is dangerous. Increased influence without divine involvement is destructive. Enlarged territory without character protection is a recipe for disaster. So he doesn't just ask for more. He asks for more with God. He asks for expansion with presence. He asks for an increase with protection. Which brings us to the third request, the heart of the entire prayer, the center of everything Jabez is asking for, the request that transforms this from a selfish plea into a sacred petition. Request 3. Stay with me. Let your hand be with me. This phrase, your hand be with me, appears over 150 times in the Old Testament. And every single time it appears, it means the same thing: divine presence, active help. God's power is working on behalf of his people. This isn't passive observation. This isn't God watching from a distance. This is God rolling up his sleeves, stepping into human history, actively intervening in real-time situations. When Moses said, "The Lord's hand was with Joseph," he meant God was actively making Joseph successful, even in prison, even as a slave, even in impossible circumstances. When the psalmist cried, "Your right hand upholds me," he meant God was sustaining him through trial, holding him up when he would have collapsed, providing strength beyond his natural capacity. When Solomon declared, "The hand of the Lord was with the prophets," he meant God was empowering their words, validating their messages, working through their actions to accomplish divine purposes. So when Jabez prays, "Let your hand be with me," he's saying something absolutely profound. God, I don't just want your blessing. I want your presence. I don't just want expanded territory. I want you in that territory with me. I don't want to go anywhere, do anything, or attempt anything without you actively working alongside me, through me, in me. I don't want your gifts without the giver. I don't want your blessings without your involvement. I don't want increase that takes me away from you. I want an increase that requires me to stay closer to you than ever before. Do you see what this does? This single phrase transforms the entire prayer from selfish to sacred. Because Jabez is essentially saying, God, I'm not asking you to bless me and then step back. I'm not asking you to expand my capacity and then leave me to manage it on my own. I'm not asking for an enlarged territory that I'll administer independently. I'm asking you to bless me and stay close, to expand myself and remain involved, to increase me and walk with me through every step of that increase. This is the difference between using God and knowing God. This is the difference between treating God like a cosmic vending machine, give me what I want, and I'll be on my way, and having an actual relationship where you say, I don't want anything you're not actively part of. I don't want any blessing that requires me to live independently of your presence. I don't want any success that takes me away from walking with you. Most people pray, God bless me, give me what I want, and I'll take it from here. Thanks for the boost. I've got it from here. I'll manage this expansion myself. But Jabez prayed, God bless me, expand my influence, but only if you're coming with me. Only if your hand remains on my life. Only if every step forward is a step closer to you rather than a step away from you. And here's what's beautiful about this request. Jabez understood something that many successful people forget in the moment of their achievement. He understood that blessing without God's presence is actually a curse. That expanded capacity without divine involvement is actually a burden. That increased influence without God's active participation is actually dangerous. Think about it. Enlarged territory without God's hand is just more responsibility to manage alone. Greater capacity without divine presence is just more opportunity to fail spectacularly. Increased influence without God's active involvement is just a bigger platform from which to fall. Success without God walking with you is actually the most dangerous position you can be in, because it gives you the illusion of self-sufficiency while removing the protection of divine oversight. Jabez knew this. He knew that his greatest need wasn't just blessing, it was God himself. He knew that his deepest desire wasn't just expansion, it was continued intimacy with the one doing the expanding. He knew that the goal wasn't achievement, it was relationship. The blessing wasn't the prize. God's presence was the prize. The territory wasn't the point. Walking with God through that territory was the point. But Jabez doesn't end his prayer there, because he understands something else, something darker, something that reveals a level of self-awareness that's almost shocking in its honesty. He understands that his greatest danger isn't staying small. His greatest danger is becoming successful, and then becoming the very thing he was named. Request 4, protect me from myself. The final safeguard. Keep me from harm so that I will be free from pain. Wait, stop, read that again. Free from pain. Do you see it? Do you see what just happened? Jabez brings his prayer full circle. He started with his name, pain, and he ended by asking to be freed from pain. This isn't random. This isn't coincidental. This is Jabez saying, God, you know my name. You know what I've been called my entire life. You know the identity that was spoken over me before I could even speak for myself. And I'm asking you, not just to bless me, not just to expand my capacity, not just to be present with me through all of this. I'm asking you to break the curse of my name. Keep me from the very thing I was named after. Protect me from becoming the pain bringer that my mother declared I would be. But here's what makes this request even more profound when you look at the Hebrew. The word translated harm here is ra'ah, and yes, it can mean harm or evil or trouble, but it specifically carries the connotation of moral evil wickedness, and doing wrong to others. Jabez isn't just asking God to protect him from bad things happening to him. He's asking God to protect him from becoming a bad person himself. He's asking God to guard his character. He's asking God to keep him from causing the kind of pain to others that was caused to him. He's saying, God, as you bless me and enlarge my territory, and walk with me through all of this expansion and increase and success, please don't let it corrupt me. Don't let blessing make me proud. Don't let expansion make me arrogant. Don't let increased influence turn me into someone who uses power to hurt people. Don't let success transform me into the very thing I was named, someone who causes pain to others. This is stunning. This is a level of self-awareness that most people never achieve. This is Jabez looking honestly at human nature, at the corrupting power of success, at the way blessing can poison character if it's not guarded, and saying, God, I can't trust myself with what I'm asking you for. I need you to protect me from my own potential corruption. We've all seen it happen, haven't we? People who prayed for success and got it, and it destroyed them. People who asked for influence and received it, and it corrupted them. People who wanted a platform and achieved it, and it ruined their character, their relationships, their families, their faith. People who were humble and kind and generous when they had nothing, who became proud and cruel and selfish when they had everything. People who loved God desperately in the season of need, who forgot God completely in the season of abundance. Blessing without character protection is dangerous. Expanded territory without moral safeguarding is destructive. Increased influence without spiritual accountability is a disaster waiting to happen. And Jabez knew this. He knew that his greatest danger wasn't staying small. It was becoming successful, and then becoming someone he never wanted to be. Think about what he's really asking for here. Jabez was named Pain. He grew up knowing what it felt like to be hurt by the people who were supposed to love him. He knew the damage that careless words could inflict on a child's soul. He knew the weight of being labeled, judged, dismissed, marked as unwanted or unfortunate, or cursed. He knew what it was like to carry someone else's pain as your identity. He knew the cost of being defined by circumstances you didn't choose and couldn't control. And now he's praying, God, as you elevate me, as you increase my influence, as you expand my capacity to impact others, please don't let me become the kind of person who inflicts that pain on someone else. Don't let me become a pain bringer. Don't let me use words as weapons. Don't let me label people in ways that mark them for life. Don't let me become so consumed with my own success that I become callous to the suffering of others. Don't let me forget what it felt like to be named Pain, so that I never cause that kind of pain in someone else's life. This is the prayer of a man who has been hurt and refuses to become someone who hurts others. This is the prayer of someone who knows his own weakness and says, God, I can't trust myself with success unless you're actively protecting my character. I can't trust myself with influence unless you're guarding my heart. I can't trust myself with blessing unless you're shaping my soul to remain humble, kind, generous, and aware of my own limitations. This is mature faith. This is self-aware spirituality. This is someone who understands that the greatest battle isn't against external enemies. It's against the internal corruption that success can breed if it's not carefully stewarded. And Jabez is saying, God, I need you to fight that battle with me. I need you to guard me against my own worst impulses. I need you to keep me from becoming the very thing my name predicted I would be. So let's look at the full structure of the prayer now, all 4 requests together, and see the brilliance of what Jabez constructed. Request 1. Bless me. Transform my identity from pain to blessed. Empower me for a purpose beyond my past. Request 2. Enlarge my territory. Expand my capacity to serve. Increase my ability to make a difference, and give me more space to be effective for your kingdom. Request 3. Let your hand be with me. Stay actively involved in everything I do. Remain present through the increase. Don't let expansion take me away from walking with you. Request 4. Keep me from harm, so I will be free from pain. Protect my character during success. Guard me against corruption. Keep me from becoming someone who causes pain to others. Do you see it now? Do you see the progression? This isn't just a list of random requests. This is a carefully constructed prayer that says, God, transform who I am, expand what I can do. Stay with me through the process and protect me from being destroyed by the very success I'm asking for. This is one of the most mature, self-aware, God-honoring prayers in all of Scripture. This is someone who understands that blessing is dangerous without presence, that expansion is risky without protection, that success can be the very thing that destroys you if you're not careful. This is someone who wants God more than he wants God's gifts, who values relationships more than results, who understands that character matters more than capacity. And then God responded, and what happened next is so unusual, so immediate, so complete, that it reveals something about the nature of prayer, about the heart of God, about what moves heaven to act on behalf of humanity. The answer that changed everything. When God says yes. After Jabez prayed this 4-part prayer, after he cried out to the God of Israel with desperate faith, with kingdom purpose, with humble self-awareness, with courageous specificity, the text says 5 words that should make every believer stop in their tracks and pay attention. And God granted his request. Not God thought about it. Not God eventually got around to it. Not God answered in his own timing. The text says God granted his request. The Hebrew word is bo. It means came to pass, was brought about, happened. It's immediate, it's complete, it's done. God said yes. And here's what's absolutely shocking about this. In the entire book of 1 Chronicles, 46 chapters, 942 verses, covering centuries of Israelite history, this is the only time we're explicitly told that God granted someone's prayer. The only time. Out of all the prayers offered throughout this massive historical record, out of all the requests made by kings and prophets and priests and common people, out of all the cries for help and pleas for intervention, this is the only prayer where the author stops the narrative and says definitively, "And God said yes." Let that sink in for a moment. One prayer. One desperate cry from a man named Pain. One carefully constructed 4-part request. And God answered so immediately, so completely, so definitively, that the biblical author broke his pattern to record it for all of history. Why? What made this prayer different? What moved God to respond with such immediacy? What caused heaven to open and pour out blessings on this particular man at this particular moment? The text doesn't explain. It simply states the fact and moves on. But when you study the prayer itself, when you examine its structure and its theology and its heart, you begin to understand why God couldn't resist saying yes. First, Jabez prayed with desperate faith. He didn't offer a casual request. He didn't pray politely or comfortably or half-heartedly. He cried out. He prayed as his life depended on it. Because it did. He had reached the end of himself, the limit of what he could achieve through his own effort, and he was now throwing himself completely on the mercy and power of God. And desperate, authentic, urgent prayer moves God's heart in ways that casual prayers never do. Second, Jabez prayed for kingdom purposes, not selfish gain. Yes, he asked for personal blessing and territorial expansion. But look at the structure of the prayer. Every request is tied to God's presence and God's protection. He wasn't trying to build his own empire independent of God. He wasn't asking for an increase so he could be self-sufficient. He was asking for the capacity to serve God's purposes more effectively, and he was asking for God to remain intimately involved in every step of that service. Third, Jabez prayed with humility and self-awareness. That fourth request, keep me from harm so I won't cause pain, reveals a man who knows his own weaknesses. A man who understands that success without character protection is dangerous. A man who doesn't trust himself with blessing unless God is actively guarding his heart. And God responds to humble prayers from people who recognize their absolute dependence on his ongoing intervention. Fourth, Jabez prayed specifically and courageously. He didn't pray vague prayers like, "Bless me if it's your will," or "Maybe expand my territory if you think it's appropriate." He asked boldly, specifically, courageously. He named what he needed. He articulated his desire clearly. He had the audacity to believe that God was interested in the specific details of his life and could be moved by specific requests. And God responds to faith-filled specificity. But I think there's a fifth reason why God answered so immediately. And this one goes deeper than technique or structure or even theology. I think God answered Jabez's prayer because Jabez dared to ask God to rewrite his story. He dared to believe that his past didn't determine his future. He dared to pray beyond his pain. He dared to ask for a blessing that his name said he didn't deserve. He dared to imagine a future so different from his past that it seemed impossible. And then he had the courage to ask God to make it real. And when God sees someone who refuses to be defined by what others call them, when God sees someone who's been labeled pain but asks to be known as blessed, when God sees someone who's been marked by suffering but still dares to pray for. The mystery of silence. What happened after God said yes? For years, this frustrated me. I wanted to know what happened. Did Jabez become wealthy? Did his territory actually expand? Did he have children who inherited all that land? Did he build cities or lead armies or become famous in Israel? Did God's hand really stay with him? Did he avoid causing pain to others? Was his life truly different after God answered his prayer? What happened? But then I began to understand something that changed my entire perspective on this passage. The very fact that we don't know what happened to Jabez after his prayer is actually the point. The silence isn't a gap in the story. It's part of the story. The mystery isn't a problem to be solved. It's a message to be received. Because you see, this story isn't really about Jabez. It never was. It's about you. It's about me. It's about every person who's ever been defined by their past, labeled by their pain, marked by their circumstances, and told by the world, "This is who you are. This is all you'll ever be. Your name is your destiny, and you can't escape it." The Bible doesn't tell us what happened after Jabez prayed, because what matters isn't his specific outcome. What matters is that God answered. What matters is that God can answer. What matters is that God will respond when someone has the courage to pray beyond their pain and ask for a future bigger than their past. What matters is that transformation is possible, that identity can be renewed, that names can be rewritten, that curses can be broken, that pain can give way to blessing. We don't need a detailed account of Jabez's life after the prayer, because we already have the most important information. He was more honorable than his brothers, and when he asked God to transform his story, God said yes. Everything else is details. Everything else is specifics that might apply to his situation, but not to ours. But the principle is universal. The truth is transferable. The message is timeless. God is in the business of rewriting stories for people who dare to ask him to. But there is something we can learn from the text's silence. Because after God answers Jabez's prayer, the genealogy continues. Life goes forward. The story moves on. And that tells us something crucial. God's answer to your prayer isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning. The blessing isn't the finish line. It's the starting point. What you do with God's yes matters just as much as getting the yes in the first place. Jabez didn't pray this prayer and then retire. He didn't receive God's blessing and then coast. The text moves forward, suggesting that Jabez moved forward too. He lived out the implications of God's answer. He stewarded the expansion. He walked in the blessing. He remained honorable even in increase. He fulfilled the responsibility that came with answered prayer. And this is where many people stumble. They pray desperate prayers, and God answers, and they receive the blessing they asked for, and then they don't know what to do with it. They prayed for expanded territory, but weren't prepared for the work required to steward it. They asked for increased capacity, but weren't ready for the responsibility that came with it. They requested God's presence, but didn't maintain the disciplines required to walk with him. They asked for character protection, but didn't cooperate with the process of sanctification. God's yes is an invitation, not a conclusion. It's an opening, not a closing. It's the start of a new chapter, not the end of the book. And what you do after God says yes will determine whether the blessing becomes a genuine transformation or just a temporary relief. So the question isn't just what happened to Jabez. The question is, what will happen to you? Because if you pray this prayer, if you dare to ask God to transform your identity, expand your capacity, remain present with you, and protect your character, God might actually say yes. And then what? Then the real work begins. Then the real journey starts. Then you have to live like someone who's been renamed, blessed, expanded, and protected by the living God. Your Jabez moment. When pain becomes prayer. Let me speak directly to you now, to the person watching this video who needs to hear this message today. You didn't click on this video by accident. You're not here randomly. Something in that title, something in that thumbnail, something in the algorithm or the recommendation or the search result brought you to this moment. And maybe it's because you've been living under a name that isn't true. Maybe your name isn't pain. Maybe it's failure because of a business that collapsed, a dream that died, a goal you couldn't achieve. Maybe it's divorced because of a marriage that ended, and now that word defines every conversation, every introduction, every way people think about you. Maybe it's barren because you've wanted children for years and can't have them, and now that absence defines your identity more than any presence ever could. Maybe it's addict because you've struggled with something you can't seem to beat, and now that struggle is how you introduce yourself, how you think about yourself, how you define yourself. Maybe it's disappointment because somewhere along the way someone important told you that you didn't meet their expectations, and now you carry that verdict as your identity. Maybe it's broken because trauma happened that you didn't cause and couldn't prevent, and now you feel permanently damaged, forever marked, irreparably shattered. Maybe it's not enough, because no matter what you achieve, no matter how hard you try, there's a voice in your head that keeps saying you're inadequate, insufficient, unworthy, and you've been carrying that name for years, maybe decades, and it's affected every decision you've made, every relationship you've entered, every opportunity you've approached or avoided. Because when you believe deep in your core that you're pain or failure or broken or not enough, you live like it. You make choices that confirm it. You avoid opportunities that might challenge it. You stay small because small is safe, and big is terrifying when you believe you're fundamentally flawed. But here's what Jabez teaches us. You can ask for a different story. You're allowed to cry out to God and say, "This name doesn't have to be my future. The past doesn't have to define me. This pain doesn't have to be permanent. This label doesn't have to be my legacy." You're allowed to believe that the God of Israel, the God who rewrote Abraham's story and Moses' story and David's story, can rewrite your story too. So let me show you how to pray Jabez's prayer for your life today. Not just repeating his words, but praying with his heart, praying with his faith, praying with his desperate courage, praying with his kingdom focus, praying with his humble self-awareness. Request 1. Oh, that you would bless me. Say this: God, I'm asking you to empower me for purpose. I'm asking you to speak a different word over me than the word the world spoke. I'm asking you to transform my identity from name your painful label to blessed, chosen, called, empowered. I'm not asking for an easy life. I'm not asking for comfort or convenience. I'm asking for your favor that enables me to do what you created me to do, despite what I've been called, despite what happened to me, despite what I've believed about myself for too long. Request 2. Enlarge my territory. Say this: God, expand my capacity to serve you. Give me more space to make a difference. Increase my influence for your kingdom, not for my ego. Open doors I couldn't open myself. Connect me with people I couldn't reach on my own. Give me opportunities that are bigger than my past, broader than my pain, more expansive than my history. Let my future be so large that my yesterday becomes irrelevant. Not so I can be comfortable, but so I can be useful. Not so I can be impressive, but so I can be impactful. Request 3. Let your hand be with me. Say this: God, I don't want a blessing without your presence. I don't want expansion without your involvement. I don't want to go anywhere. You're not actively working. Stay close to me through this transformation. Don't just answer my prayer and step back. Walk with me, work with me, remain intimately involved in every decision, every conversation, every step forward. I want you, not just what you can give me. I want a relationship, not just results. I want your presence more than I want your presence. Request 4. Keep me from harm so I will be free from pain. Say this: God, as you bless me and expand me and walk with me through all of this transformation, protect my character. Don't let success corrupt me. Don't let influence make me proud. Don't let blessing make me forget where I came from or how desperately I needed you. Keep me from becoming the very thing I was called. Keep me from causing pain to others the way pain was caused to me. Guard my heart against arrogance, selfishness, and the corruption that power can breed. Make me honorable, even in increase. Make me humble, even in success. Make me kind, even when I have the power to be cruel. Keep me walking with you, dependent on you, aware of my need for you every single day, of my expanded life. And then, trust that God hears. Believe that God can answer. Expect that God will respond. Maybe not immediately. Maybe not in the exact way you imagined. Maybe not according to your timeline or your specific plan. But if you pray with desperate faith, with kingdom purpose, with humble self-awareness, and with courageous specificity, God has a track record of saying yes. Living the answered prayer. After God says yes. But let me challenge you with something crucial. Don't just pray the prayer. Live the prayer. Don't just ask for a blessing and then go back to living small. Don't just pray for expansion and then shrink from opportunity when it comes. Don't just request God's hand and then make decisions without Him. Don't just ask for character protection and then stop cooperating with the process of transformation. Because God's answer to your Jabez prayer will require something from you. It will require courage. The courage to walk through doors you didn't think you deserved to walk through. To step into opportunities you thought were for other people. To accept blessings you've been conditioned to believe weren't meant for someone like you. It will require courage to live like someone who's been renamed by God, even when the world still calls you by your old name. It will require humility, the humility to remember who you were so you don't become proud about who you are. The humility to stay grateful in blessing, to remain teachable in success, to keep walking with God even when you no longer desperately need Him to survive. The humility to say, I was pain, but God made me blessed rather than I was always blessed. Pain was just a temporary setback. It will require stewardship, the responsibility to manage the increase God gives you with integrity, to use expanded capacity for kingdom purposes, to treat enlarged territory as a trust from God rather than a trophy for yourself. It will require stewardship of relationships, of resources, of influence, of opportunities. God's yes comes with responsibility. It will require persistence, the determination to keep going when the enlarged territory feels overwhelming, when the expanded capacity seems like more than you can handle, when the blessing brings challenges you didn't anticipate. Because bigger isn't always easier. Expanded isn't always comfortable. Blessed doesn't mean problem-free. It means empowered for purpose, and purpose always comes with pressure. And it will require dependence, the ongoing recognition that you need God just as much in blessing as you did in pain, just as desperately in expansion as you did in limitation, just as urgently in success as you did in struggle, maybe more. Because the season of blessing is often when we're most tempted to forget God, to think we've arrived, to believe we can take it from here. Jabez was more honorable than his brothers, not more talented, not more educated, not born into better circumstances or given more advantages, just more honorable. And that honor was forged in the fire of refusing to become what he was called. That honor was developed through years of fighting against his identity, resisting his label, proving that he was more than his name. That honor was tested and proven before God answered his prayer. And that honor had to be maintained after God said yes. You can be more honorable than your past. You can be more blessed than your name suggests. You can be more effective than your circumstances predicted. You can be more impactful than your history indicated you could ever be. But it starts with a prayer, a desperate, faith-filled, kingdom-focused, character-protecting prayer that says, God, I refuse to be defined by what was spoken over me. I'm asking you to rewrite my story. And when you do, I promise to steward it with honor. I promise to walk it out with humility. I promise to remain close to you through all of it. I promise to never forget that I was pain, but you made me blessed. The invitation. Your story starts now. So here we are, at the end of this deep dive into 2 verses that contain a lifetime of truth. We've examined every word of Jabez's prayer. We've explored the Hebrew meanings, the cultural context, and the theological implications. We've looked at why his name mattered, why his prayer worked, and why God answered so definitively. We've applied it to modern life, personalized it for your situation, and challenged you to pray it with authentic faith. But all of that is just information until you do something with it. All of this is just interesting biblical history until it becomes your personal story. All of these insights are just intellectual concepts until they move from your head to your heart, to your knees in desperate prayer. So let me ask you directly, what name have you been carrying? What label has defined you for too long? What past has limited your future? What pain has prevented you from believing in blessing? What failure has kept you from asking for expansion? What brokenness has convinced you that you don't deserve God's presence or need His protection? And are you ready to cry out? Are you ready to pray beyond your pain? Are you ready to ask for a future bigger than your history? Are you ready to believe that God sees you, hears you, and can answer you just like He answered Jabez 3,000 years ago? Because if you are, if you're at that breaking point, where honorable isn't enough anymore, where you're desperate for something more, where you're willing to risk the vulnerability of authentic prayer, then this is your moment. This is your Jabez moment. This is when you cry out to the God of Israel and say, "Oh, that you would bless me, transform my identity, empower me for purpose, speak a new word over me that drowns out every painful word that was spoken before. Enlarge my territory, expand my capacity, increase my influence, give me space to serve you more effectively. Open doors I couldn't open, create opportunities I couldn't create. Let my future dwarf my past. Let your hand be with me. Stay close, remain involved, walk with me through every step of this expansion. Don't let blessing take me away from you. Keep me dependent, keep me connected, keep me close. Keep me from harm, so I will be free from pain. Protect my character, guard my heart. Don't let success corrupt me. Don't let influence make me proud. Don't let me become someone who causes pain to others. Make me honorable, even in increase. And then trust. Trust that God hears desperate prayers. Trust that God responds to authentic faith. Trust that God is in the business of rewriting stories for people who dare to ask Him to. Trust that your past doesn't determine your future. Your name doesn't define your destiny. And when you cry out to the God who specializes in transformation, He might just say yes. Join the journey. If this deep dive into Jabez's story has impacted you, so here's what I want you to do. First, subscribe to Deep Bible History and turn on notifications. Don't miss the next deep dive. Don't skip the next untold story. Don't let the algorithm decide whether you get to experience the next revelation from God's Word. Second, leave a comment below telling me which one-verse Bible character we should investigate next. Who are you curious about? What name in a genealogy has caught your attention? What brief mention in Scripture has made you wonder, what's the story there? Your engagement helps shape our content, and I genuinely want to explore the stories you want to hear. Third, share this video with someone who needs it. You know someone who's been living under a painful label. You know someone who needs permission to pray a bigger prayer. You know someone who's been told their pain and needs to hear that God can make them blessed. send them this link. It might be the exact message they need at the exact moment they need it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for going deep with me. Thank you for caring about the untold stories, the forgotten characters, the overlooked passages that contain life-changing truth. Thank you for being part of a community that believes God's Word is endlessly fascinating, perpetually relevant, and worth exploring with everything we have. Remember, your past doesn't determine your future. Your name doesn't define your destiny. And when you dare to cry out to the God of Israel with desperate, authentic, kingdom-focused faith, He just might say yes. This has been Deep Bible History. Now go pray your Jabez prayer, and I'll see you in the next deep dive.